Hello, and welcome to Paint the Past. I'm your host, Amaris. What we're looking at today is a fossil leaf from North Dakota. It's about 160 million years old, pressed into a piece of iron-rich orange shale. The reference photo I'm using is by Anders Sandberg via Wikimedia Commons, and I'll leave a link to it in the description below the video. The leaf is fan-shaped, with a long, thin stalk and a pattern of fine veins that spread out from the base like fingers, or the ribs of a handheld fan. The thing that stops you in your tracks when you first really look at this is that it doesn't look 60 million years old. It looks almost indistinguishable from a leaf that could have fallen off a ginkgo tree this morning, because these trees are still alive today. This fossil is from an extinct species, but one so closely related to the living ginkgo tree that paleobotanists need a microscope to tell them apart. And to anyone who's ever seen a ginkgo in autumn, with its distinctive fan-shaped leaves turning that deep butter yellow, this fossil will look immediately familiar. Spending some time with it opens up a story about deep time, about extraordinary survival, and about what it takes for a lineage of plants to still be alive after 270 million years. The leaf shape here is entirely distinctive. Every ginkgo leaf, fossil or living, has the same basic architecture. A fan with veins that branch repeatedly in two, never merging back, spreading from the base to the outer edge. No other tree produces a leaf like this. It's so recognizable that scientists can identify a fossil ginkgo from a tiny fragment if the vein pattern is preserved. The ginkgo lineage has been remarkably consistent in its leaf design for an extraordinarily long time. Paleobotanists examining 60 million year old fossils like this have to use a microscope and study the microscopic structure of the leaf's waxy coating to tell it apart from the living ginkgo species. The shape, the size, the fan form, the veins, they're all essentially the same. What's in front of me is technically a different, extinct species, but it's the closest thing to a botanical time machine you're likely ever to find. That degree of consistency over tens of millions of years is genuinely rare in the fossil record. Most ancient things look ancient. This doesn't. North Dakota, 60 million years ago, was a very different place. The whole world was. The non-avian dinosaurs had just gone extinct. The asteroid that ended the Cretaceous hit about 6 million years before this leaf fell. The aftermath of that extinction was still unfolding. Where the great dinosaurs had been, the world was being cautiously re-inhabited by mammals, most of them still small and unrecognizable as the ancestors of anything we know today. The first primates were just getting started. The first rodents were appearing, and the ancestors of horses, whales, and elephants were taking their initial, tentative evolutionary steps. The climate was warm, substantially warmer than today, with no permanent ice caps at either pole. The Arctic had forests. What is now North Dakota was a subtropical floodplain, dense and humid, and threaded with rivers. Think something between the modern American South and a tropical rainforest. The ginkgo tree that dropped this leaf was growing at the edge of one of those rivers, in a dense canopy alongside palms, ferns, and early flowering plants. And here's the thing that puts the whole picture in perspective. Even 60 million years ago, ginkgo was already an ancient plant. The ginkgo lineage first appeared in the fossil record about 270 million years ago. Trees recognizably belonging to the ginkgo family with the same basic leaf architecture go back at least 170 million years, to the middle of the Jurassic, the era of the great sauropod dinosaurs. When this leaf fell, Its lineage had already survived the mass extinction that killed the dinosaurs by 6 million years. From 60 million years ago onward, the ginkgo story is one of gradual retreat. Early in the period, ginkgo trees grew in forests all across the northern hemisphere. North America, Europe, Asia, even high Arctic latitudes, when they were warm enough to support them. Over the following tens of millions of years, as the global climate slowly cooled, that range started to contract. Ginkgos disappeared from North America about 10 million years ago. They disappeared from Europe 2 to 3 million years ago. And then, in the ice ages of the last 2 million years, that group nearly vanished altogether. Part of the reason is that ginkgo, in evolutionary terms, is a very conservative plant. It grows slowly. It doesn't begin reproducing until it's decades old, sometimes over a century. Its seeds are large and take a long time to germinate. These are all strategies of a plant that evolved in a world that moved slowly. The Mesozoic world, before flowering plants took over, when competition was different. When the angiosperms, the flowering plants, came to dominate the world, they were faster, more adaptable, better at colonizing disturbed areas. The ginkgo couldn't keep up. There's also probably a lost partnership involved. The ginkgo seed is large and fleshy on the outside, designed to be eaten by animals that would then carry it elsewhere and pass the inner seed out with their waste. In the Mesozoic, dinosaurs were the obvious candidates for this role, but after the extinction, large mammals must have taken over. But as habitats shrank and megafauna declined, ginkgo lost the animals that had spread it. It was stranded. After surviving the Permian extinction, the Triassic extinction, and the Cretaceous extinction that killed the dinosaurs, by the end of the last ice age, the only ginkgo trees left in the world were in a handful of mountain valleys in central China. A lineage 270 million years old had been reduced to a few isolated pockets. If conditions had been slightly harsher, we might be looking at this fossil today as evidence of a completely extinct family of plants. But that's also where the story turns, in a direction you might not expect. Around 1,000 years ago, people in China started planting ginkgo trees. The oldest ginkgos alive today, trees that are over 1,000 years old, stand in the gardens of Buddhist and Taoist temples. Buddhist monks, in particular, seem to have played a key role in keeping the species alive. They planted ginkgo trees in their temple gardens. They venerated the trees, and they maintained them through the centuries when the wild populations were at their most vulnerable. So, as a side effect of the tree being considered beautiful and sacred, the ginkgo survived because people liked it. From China, the trees spread to Korea and Japan, where they became culturally embedded in a different way. In Japan, city planners in the late 19th century started lining boulevards with ginkgos, and this fashion eventually crossed the Pacific. By the early 20th century, ginkgo trees were being planted across American and European cities, valued for exactly the things that made them survivors in the first place: extraordinary tolerance to pollution and soil compaction, road salt, and disease. While other urban trees suffer and die, the ginkgo barely notices. The botanist Peter Crane, who wrote one of the best books ever published about a single plant, calls the ginkgo a good news story, a tree that people saved. A lineage that was heading slowly toward extinction over millions of years, and then humans came along, entirely without knowing what they were doing in evolutionary terms, and scattered it across the world. It's a rare reversal of the usual human relationship with wild species. There is one aspect of the ginkgo's urban career that deserves its own mention, which is the smell. Ginkgo trees are either male or female. Separate trees, where the males produce only pollen and the females produce only seeds. The seeds that are large and fleshy on the outside look a bit like small yellowish plums, and when they fall to the ground and start to decompose, they release a chemical called butyric acid. Butyric acid is the compound responsible for the smell of rancid butter. At higher concentrations, it's also the dominant scent in human vomit. One mature female ginkgo can drop hundreds of these seeds in a single autumn, and the resulting smell can be genuinely overpowering. Cities that have accidentally planted female ginkgos, and many have, because you genuinely can't tell a young male from a young female tree, and the trees don't reveal their sex until they're 15 to 20 years old. They've tried a variety of responses. Washington, D.C. has, at various times, paid workers to shake the seeds loose before they ripen, and spent money spraying the trees with chemicals to suppress the seed development. Some cities have banned female ginkgo trees outright. The standard solution now is to plant only male cultivars, grown from cuttings of known male trees. Here's the irony, though. The smell almost certainly evolved to attract seed dispersers. Animals that eat carrion or that are drawn to powerfully smelly things would have been the tree's original dispersers in the Mesozoic and after. We've removed those animals from almost every ecosystem, and now we penalize the tree for the smell it evolved to call them back. The ginkgo is coping with a world that no longer works the way it did when its strategy evolved. Despite everything I've just described about the ginkgo's slowness and its conservatism, it's remarkably hard to kill. Pollution, disease, insects, soil compaction, road salt, drought, things that devastate other urban trees barely affect a ginkgo. Its roots can push through concrete. It's resistant to fungal infections that kill other species. There are no known insect pests that specifically target it. Individual trees live for thousands of years. Some specimens in China and Japan are estimated to be well over 2,000 years old. And it has a biological backup system that researchers find genuinely fascinating. Older ginkgo trees develop woody nodules near the base of the trunk, clusters of dormant cells that can, if the tree is severely damaged, activate and grow new shoots. You can burn a ginkgo, strip its crown, damage its bark to the heartwood, and it can come back from these nodules. It's kind of a last resort built into the architecture of the tree. We know these things because it was tested. In 1945, when the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, killing 80,000 people in an instant, 6 ginkgo trees standing within 1 to 2 kilometers of the blast hypocenter survived. Everything around them was destroyed. Their leaves had burned off, their bark was scorched, their outer wood charred. But the living cells at the core had survived. By the autumn of 1945, they were producing new growth. The first mayor of Hiroshima after the bombing wrote about what that meant to the city's survivors. He described seeing a new green shoot emerging from the burned ground as emotionally overwhelming in a way that was hard to put into words. Those 6 trees are still standing today, protected as living memorials. Seeds from their descendants have been planted in botanical gardens and peace memorials around the world as part of a project called Green Legacy Hiroshima. Before we finish, there's one more biological curiosity about this tree that's too good to leave out. In 1896, a Japanese botanist was examining the inside of a female ginkgo tree's reproductive organ under a microscope in Tokyo. He was watching a pollen grain that had been deposited on the tree weeks earlier, waiting to see how it would fertilize the egg. And what he saw astonished him. The pollen had developed into free-swimming sperm cells, equipped with tiny hair-like structures that they used to propel themselves toward the egg. Swimming sperm in a tree. This was not known to exist in any seed plant. Ferns and mosses use swimming sperm, but they need liquid water to reproduce, which is one of the reasons they're tied to damp environments. But seed plants were supposed to have evolved past this. The discovery revealed that the ginkgo's reproductive system was fundamentally more ancient and more primitive than anyone had suspected. It was reproducing in a way that tied it directly to the earliest days of plant evolution, hundreds of millions of years before the first dinosaurs walked the earth. The botanical world was astonished. The finding still stands today as one of the most remarkable facts about any living tree. The name ginkgo, for the record, is a mistake. When a German naturalist encountered the tree in Japan in the late 1600s and wrote down its name in his notebook, he misspelled a Japanese word that itself was a translation of a Chinese name meaning silver apricot. When the great Swedish taxonomist Linnaeus later named the species formally, he used the misspelled version, and that locked it in permanently. So the tree has a wrong name, and it's too late to change it. Which is a small, fitting detail for a species whose story is full of things being not quite what they were expected to be. This fossil brings up questions about what survival actually means over long time periods. The ginkgo lineage survived by being tough when toughness was required, living through mass extinctions, retreating slowly, holding on in mountain refuges when the rest of the world had moved past it. But toughness alone wasn't enough. The ginkgo was heading toward extinction at the end of the ice ages, regardless of how tough it was. What saved it was being useful and beautiful enough that a human culture decided to plant it, tend it, and spread it. Not a conservation program, not a scientific intervention. Just monks who liked a tree. And now it grows in Tokyo and New York and London and Sydney, its autumn leaves still turning that deep saffron yellow that nothing else quite matches, and its seeds still calling out for the Mesozoic animals that no longer exist to collect them. A 270-million-year-old design, navigating a world nothing like the one where it developed. And yet, it's still here. The fossil I'm painting is 60 million years old. The living tree it so closely resembles belongs to a lineage 270 million years old. And if you go outside right now and find a ginkgo on a street corner, in a park, in a botanical garden, you can pick up one of its fallen leaves and look at the veins, fanning out from the base, and you're holding something that looks virtually identical to what I'm painting. Not the same species, but certainly a testament to the evolutionary version of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thanks for joining me for this look at a remarkable survivor from long before the dinosaurs. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd be thrilled if you'd join me again for future ones. If you have ideas for paintable artifacts with cool stories, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. See you next time!